Hello, thank you for joining the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs for our Wednesday webinar where today we'll be talking about passwords and passkeys. You probably all use passwords in some way, shape, or form. We'll talk about some ways to kind of strengthen those and some kind of best practices with passwords. But a lot of websites and applications, softwares are kind of getting away from passwords and they're adopting what's kind of known as passkeys. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about what those are and kind of the security functions for those and why a lot of kind of cybersecurity experts say they're the future and more secure and will better protect you than passwords. So we'll kind of go over a little bit of both of these during this presentation today. And I always like to give a quick little roadmap of what we'll be discussing. So we'll give you a quick introduction to SCDCA, who we are and how we can help you. And then we'll talk about what are passkeys and the benefits of using them and how to use them. And then we'll give you that kind of quick refresher on how to make a strong password and some of the security measures you can use beyond passwords that will help kind of beef up your security methods. And then, as always, we have some free tools that you can take advantage of that will help protect your information and identity. And now I kind of want to get into the main part of our presentation. And we're going to start with passkeys because I know a lot of people probably haven't taken advantage of them yet. And you're probably hearing a lot about them. So what are passkeys? Simply, they're just a replacement for passwords. And they'll allow you to log in or sign into those applications and those programs without using a password. And it's essentially a form of multi-factor authentication. A lot of times it works exactly like your multi-factor authentication methods would. So it's either that face scan or you might get that PIN that's sent to your device, all those different types of things. And they're using that information basically verify that you're the account owner, right? So you're using that, the biometrics or that device PIN to sign in. Instead of using a password, you're using that passkey. So you're using those biometrics and those pins like you would with multi-factor authentication to sign in. And it's kind of important to note that each passkey is kind of unique to your device and to each person. So that's kind of the security function with that. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit more here in a minute about how those operate with that. But kind of the benefits for the passkeys are they're easy to use, right? You just hold up your phone, do that face scan, and it gets you in there. It's supposed to be a faster login, so you're not typing in all those long passwords and things like that. Instead, like I mentioned, you might either get that PIN and it's just a couple of quick digits that you fill in, or it might be that face scan that you're holding up and doing that as your sign in. So it's getting you into those accounts and those apps a lot faster. The simple thing is, we always hear from people, I keep forgetting my passwords. I have so many. How am I supposed to remember this? Well, passkeys are kind of a solution to that. So you don't have to worry about forgetting passwords or remembering a ton of different ones, right? So you're just, again, using that face scan to get in there. And again, they're all unique to each user and to each device. And they're supposed to be more resistant to phishing attacks. And I'll talk a good bit about that here in a second. And they reduce the risk of account takeover. So that's those cases where there's a hacker who maybe gets into those accounts, not anything that you've done, but they get into the account that you have, or that company that runs that website, or whatever the case may be. The passkeys are going to be more protected against that type of stuff. So those passwords wouldn't be, necessarily something to worry about if they're taken over in that case. But they can sync between devices and allow you access to multiple or to different accounts through multiple devices. So you can kind of sync them throughout all those devices. And kind of the example of that I kind of go back to kind of think about this is just kind of how my TV works. A lot of times whenever I'm on a streaming service or something like that I'm using on my TV, it may be signed out for some reason or another. Then it ask me if I can scan a QR code. It knows that my phone is already signed into that account and registered with that. So then I have to scan that QR code, or maybe it gives me that PIN up on the screen, something like that. Those are kind of examples of how this would work. So you're kind of using one device to confirm the second device. And that's kind of how a lot of that works. And it's using that information to verify that that sign in is actually somebody authorized to be into that account. So how do they work? something called cryptography. And if you're like me, you probably don't have a computer science degree. My degree was in journalism. And I've, been here at Consumer Affairs for a few years. So I'm not necessarily a computer science expert in this, but basically the cryptography is basically encryption technology. And with encryption technology with this, they kind of word it as a public key for encryption and a private key for decryption. And when I say public, it's not necessarily like public, like we would think everybody has access to it. That's that kind of information that that website or that app has access to. And the private key side of it is that information that's on your devices. So basically, they're using that pass key to sign into the account. The private key is the one that's actually getting you to sign into that account. And the biometrics that you're using are all kind of confirming that information that the device is in your protection. And then it's going to kind of unlock that and get you into the application or the software that you're trying to get into. And I'll kind of read the way that Microsoft describes it. And they say that, instead of using that password over the internet, your device is generating that pair of keys. Again, it's a private key, a public key. And the private key is the one that's securely on your device, and that public key is the one that's registered with the website or the application that you're using. So when you're trying to sign into that website or that application, your device then has to prove that who it is, right? So it's kind of proving that information with that private key and then unlocking it. And that's kind of your digital sign in, and it's using all that information on your device to kind of verify everything. So it's kind of using that electronic signature that's attached to your device and that information to get you that access into that account that you're trying to get into. So what are the security benefits of it? Basically, it requires access to the device. So again, it kind of works a lot of the same way that multi-factor authentication would work. Basically, you have to have that device in order to get into that account, or a device that's already signed in with it too. You can also kind of use multiple devices again to sign into some of these accounts, but you have to have that device that's been authorized to get into that website or that app in order to get in. And kind of the main security benefit of it is it only works for that specific website or app. So if you're, maybe clicked onto a phishing email that would go to something like Netflix, that's a good example. We all get those kind of phishing emails, right? If you were to click into that phishing email and it went into that fake website, it's not going to use your security credentials to go to that fake website. That passkey recognizes that that's not the site that that key belongs to. So it's going to kind of stop that information from being transferred over. Whereas if you were using a password, you might kind of look at that and say, oh, this is, the website that I'm trying to get onto, even though it's fake. And you would enter all your credentials in. Well, the passkey is going to kind of stop that information from being shared. It realizes this is not the website that this information goes to. So that device is not going to allow that information from being transferred from you into that fake website. And again, it kind of reduced that risk of security breach danger. So again, you have to have that device. So even if somebody were to hack and get that one part of the key, they're not getting the key that's actually on your device. So that's kind of why they say it's a little bit better protected from these security breach risk. And a lot of cybersecurity experts say that the encrypted information that's involved with passkeys kind of exceeds all the security and compliance requirements that a lot of legal protections that are, certain industries have to have certain security clearances on their sites and the way they store information, that type of stuff. And they say that passkeys kind of exceed all of those mandated compliance and security requirements as well. And passkeys are pretty easy to use. There's a chance you're probably using them already, or at least been asked to use them by a lot of websites and things like that. So really the main thing is, in order to set them up, you just have to log into a service that already supports it. So you put in your information and they probably automatically give you some kind of prompt that's going to ask you if you want to create a passkey. If they don't, you can probably go into the account settings or something like that and figure out the ways that they have it set up, but it's probably an option that's already in those security or those account settings. So you can just kind of go into that. If you've opted out of it, go into those account or security settings and see what that platform offers. And they probably have a way to opt in at that point. And if not, you can always reach out to those companies and see what their process is to setting up that passkey. But basically, all you have to do is verify your identity with those biometrics, or even if it's that PIN that they'll set up, but they'll kind of ask you what way you want to do. I know most of the time when I'm setting up stuff on my phone, it's automatically kind of going to those biometrics where it's that face scan, right? So they're asking you to set up that face scan. You hold it up to your phone, just takes a few seconds, and then it will kind of tie that to that account, and then that's your way to log in from now on. And if you're using multiple platforms or multiple devices, signing in, things like that, you probably, again, will have to use a QR code, something like that, in order to set up that other device and those other methods to be able to sign in that. So that's going to allow you to use multiple devices for those accounts. And one of the benefits that I've seen listed online for using these passkeys are they can kind of operate through multiple iOSs as well. So you can use that Google account on a PC, you can use it on an iPhone, you can kind of use it throughout those different softwares like that, and those different account setups like that. That might be different for Google, iPhone, and Microsoft and things like that. So you can kind of use them throughout those different operating systems and things like that. So again, how can you use them? Well, you do have to have certain kind of software updates. So you need to be running one of the more up-to-date softwares to do that. If you haven't updated all your software and your operating systems, I would encourage you to do that. These are kind of those lists for that. So you do have to have a Windows 10, the Mac OS Ventura, or Chrome OS 109. Of course, if you're using it with the phone, you have to have that iOS 16 on Apple or Android 9. And then if you have a browser, I've got the list of those up there that are supported with the browsers that you can take a look at that, depending on if you use Safari, Edge, Firefox, Chrome, whatever the case may be. But you will need one of those updated browsers that's going to give you those functions with that. So if you haven't updated your iOS or your browsers that you use frequently, I would encourage you to kind of go in those and make sure that you're keeping all your software and your systems to update. And again, of course, that always protects you from security risk as well, because they're always doing those updates to kind of give you those new security features and close those gaps on any kind of vulnerabilities that may be out there. So make sure you're kind of updating all your software frequently, and then you should be all right to use a passkey. And I do want to kind of give you a little bit more information to use. If you download the slides, again, they're in the little chat section. If you go in there and download the slides, it'll give you more information from each of these providers. So if you got Apple accounts or Google, Microsoft, they all offer a great deal of information kind of about their requirements for passkeys and kind of how they work with their sites. So you can kind of go in that and make sure you've got everything kind of set up for the way that these companies require in order for you to use passkeys on those devices. And I've also got a link there for the National Cybersecurity Alliance. They've got a pretty good article on passkeys and how they work and things like that. National Cybersecurity Alliance is a nonprofit that works to educate people on ways that they can protect themselves from cybercrime. So I'd encourage you, if you're looking to really dig deep into figuring out how passkeys work, they've got a great deal of information as well. And I believe they have some webinars and things that they've done just with some cybersecurity experts who really kind of get down into some of the technical part of that as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would say, go into these links and you can kind of figure out some of the specifics about their requirements about Apple, Google, and Microsoft as well. All right, so if you're not comfortable yet with switching over to passkeys, or maybe you're using accounts that haven't started developing and making you use those passkeys yet, we're going to give a quick refresher on just kind of how to build a strong password and some of the things that you might want to consider with your passwords if you're still using them. The big thing is making them long, right? So now security experts kind of recommend 16 characters. I know that number's even gone up the last couple of years since I've been working at Consumer Affairs. So 16 characters or more is kind of that recommendation for those. And of course, we get a lot of these recommendations again from National Cybersecurity Alliance and from Homeland Security as well, and the FBI. So they recommend at least 16 characters, and you want to make them unique for each account. I always tell people you don't want somebody to get access to something like your Netflix or your streaming services, and then be able to use that same password to get into your bank accounts and those type of things, or into your email, or those things that are just kind of very important to us. So it's important, again, to make all these accounts unique for each other. Don't reuse the same things over and over. And you want to use those combination of uppercase, lowercase, letters, and symbols, all those type of things. And they always say randomly generated passwords are the best to use, and that just makes them extremely strong, makes them hard to guess, makes them hard to figure out, and all those. So, again, if you're making them really long and they're random, you probably need a password manager or something like that to kind of help you keep track of them. So, that's one of those good things you can do, is take advantage of those password managers. And I'll show you a little bit about that here in a few minutes as well. But these are kind of our best tips to take advantage of to create a strong password. So I want to give you just a quick example of a strong password and kind of walk you through the process of how we might create one. And the first thing would be maybe a sentence or a phrase that's meaningful to you. Again, password is kind of the thing that they don't say anymore. A lot of times I hear people refer to them as pass phrases. And I know a lot of people I work with will take a book that they're really like, or something like that, or maybe a song, and they'll take phrases from that book or that song to come up with the password. And I've got an example here, and this is not one that I specifically use myself, so it's not attached to any of my passwords, so we don't have to worry about that. But you might come up with a sentence from something that you enjoy, and in this case, we'll take the song, "The sun will come out tomorrow, bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there will be sun." And what we're going to do is select the first letter of each word. So what you'll see there are the arrows for all those first letters of the word, and that will give us the 16 characters we need, which in this case are going to look like this when it comes out. And of course, that's pretty long, and I would not be able to remember that on my own without that. So that's kind of why you use that song, and you're using those first letters of those words. But it's not really that strong yet. So what we're going to do now is insert uppercase and lowercase letters in there. We've already got our lowercase, so we're just going to go through and we're going to grab some uppercase letters. In this case, I'm just grabbing 3, and I'm just grabbing kind of those random ones in there that kind of maybe make sense in my head for whatever those are. And if some people like to use maybe the first word of a sentence or something like that, but just kind of figure out whatever works for you. In this case, they're kind of random, but they make sense in my head. So we're just grabbing the W, the B, and that final T in there. And now we're going to substitute some letters with numbers or special characters. And you'll see them here. And we've got our dollar sign in place of that S for sun. And then we've got a 0 for the O and out. And of course, 2 for tomorrow. And then I did that a second time with the 2, and another time with the S, changing it out for the dollar sign there. And now we're going to just double check everything, and then we'll see what we've got here. We've got 16 characters long. We do have that. And we do have at least one number. We've got them in there twice. And we also have our capital letters. And we also have our symbol because we have the dollar sign. And what I was hoping to do, and I should have copied this before, I did not copy my password, and I will tell you I'm not going to remember that. But this is a pretty good website to use. And we'll pull this up, and it's basically just a strong password check. And this website does not store any of the information in there. And let me see if I can get into my slide, and we'll try to click out of here to be able to copy that for us. So hopefully you're still seeing that website. And what I'm going to do is go in and copy our new password and kind of show you how this works. And again, this is a pretty cool website that we've got here. I'm going to click this again. Sorry about that. That's just me pulling all my different stuff up. But again, we have our password right here, and it's showing us that it is very strong. And they've got us set up here with, show you kind of based on the number of characters, if it's uppercase, lowercase, and all of those things. And they've also got it listed as the deduction. So if you only have numbers or you only have letters, they'll kind of show you that about why maybe they've uh, deduced some points. So in this case, we have some consecutive lowercase letters. So they've taken away some points with that. But again, our password looks like it is very strong. And that is a great thing to take advantage of. And again, they're not using information of this to kind of store what this password is or why, we're putting that in there. So they're not keeping that information. So that's good to know as well. But again, this will strength test the thing that you can use, and it will kind of help you see if your password is strong or not. And one of the things we're always asked about is, when you should change your password. I know our work, state government here, they require us to change our passwords every so many days. Cybersecurity experts, some of them will say, if your password's strong enough, there's really no reason to change your passwords often. There's kind of a disagreement on that, so I'm going to leave that to those experts. But the big things you should know is if your passwords are involved in a breach on a website, app, or if your computer system's hacked or something like that on your own device, that's when you kind of definitely need to start going in and changing some of those passwords. Might also want to consider changing all those passwords if you've lost your device, especially if it's one that's maybe not locked. I encourage everybody to set up your phones, computers, things like that to make it required to have some kind of sign in to be able to get into those devices. But if you've lost that device, you probably want to go in, kind of look at those passwords and start changing things up just in case somebody's able to get in and get access to all those things, especially if you have those passwords saved where you're automatically logging into anything. That would be kind of that situation where you definitely want to go in and do that. Of course, that situation comes up where somebody else has your passwords for one reason or another. You definitely want to go in there and change those passwords up. What are our kind of best tips for keeping your password secure? Simply don't reuse the passwords you've used on other accounts. Kind of mentioned that a second ago. You don't want a hacker or somebody to be able to get access to one account and be able to get into everything that you have. A password manager is a good thing that can kind of help you remember all of these different things, and you don't have to manage those on your own. It'll also kind of give you some information if there's been a breach or if you're reusing the same passwords or just have weak passwords. These password managers can kind of help you navigate through all of that. And of course, the big thing is they just help you keep those randomly generated long passwords organized, and you don't have to worry about remembering all of that. Of course, you do have to have that kind of one main password that gets you into that password manager, and you want to make sure that you secure that password very well, and you're using an extremely strong password for that password manager, but you want to just remember that one password, and it's going to give you access to all these other passwords. And there's some pretty good information. Again, Stay Safe Online, it's National Cybersecurity Alliance, and they've got a lot of good information on password managers that we recommend you can take a look at and kind of see what some of those best practices are. And I believe they may also kind of have some that they look at in particular, because people always ask us, what password managers do you recommend? And as a state employee, I can tell you we can't recommend one software, one device, one company over another. But there are plenty of magazines, websites, things like that that kind of look at these types of issues, and you can kind of find somebody that you trust, see what they recommend, and go from there. And of course, if you've got to pick security questions, for those backups where if you forget your password, you want to make sure you're using things that nobody else would know, right? So don't make them things like your mother's maiden name or your address or any of those type things. And again, if there's a breach, some kind of security issue with the website or app, something that you use, you want to make sure you're changing those passwords pretty quickly, because you don't want to give those hackers time to take advantage of those situations. And I like to just show a quick little thing on your website browsers. I know a lot of us will save our passwords into those website browsers. There are some security experts who argue if that's a good idea or not. For most of us, it's probably the easiest way to kind of save those passwords and manage a lot of those. Again, if you're doing that, just make sure that your browser, so like in this situation, using Chrome, if you're doing that and you're putting those passwords into Chrome, you want to make sure that your Google password is extremely secure, and you're doing all of those steps to make sure nobody can get into that program or into that service for you. So you want to make sure you're protecting that Google password pretty strongly there. But I'm going to kind of show you a little bit about how the browsers work with that password managers that they have. Generally in the settings, you'll see something like this where it says autofill and passwords, and then you can kind of go in and look at that password manager that they have there. And it will probably take you to a screen that's kind of like this one. You can run that little checkup that you see there, and then it's going to give you that idea of what's going on with all your passwords. So in this version that we did, this will quick check. It says no compromised passwords, but you will see that there are 2 reused passwords. So that's giving you that opportunity to kind of go in there and fix that security, let's say flaw, because it's something that we've done, right? So it's kind of showing you that there's a risk there because you've got 2 reused passwords. So it's giving you that opportunity to go in there and kind of fix that. So you can change one of those passwords and then you would be good to go. But it's also noticing that I've got one password that's weak. So it's recommending go in there, change that password and make it stronger. And if you click on those little tabs there, it'll show you which passwords are at risk. And we did run this a little while back with a different employee who you'll see there's a couple of different compromised passwords, and it says 241 weak passwords that they've saved. I don't know if I have that many saved on my browser. I might on my phone, who knows? But go through those, look at that. Definitely want to fix those compromised passwords. Probably be a little overwhelming going in changing some of those weak passwords, but they're recommending you do that. And if there are accounts you're actually using, you can kind of go through all of those and fix all of those weak passwords. But it will also kind of show you those, like I said, the compromised ones that have been found in a data breach. It'll let you know what those accounts are, and you might want to go in and change those as soon as you can. And I do want to give you a couple quick other things that you can do besides passwords and passkeys that will help strengthen you up. And again, those passkeys are a type of multi-factor authentication. So take advantage of that. But if you're using passwords, you definitely want to take advantage of, the technology to help you with multi-factor authentication, put those onto those accounts. So we'll kind of double up that security. The FBI tells us that it's the best thing you can do. It makes it twice as hard to get into your accounts. If a hacker or somebody's able to get access to those passwords, they need those passcodes or that face scan, that other thing that you're doing with your device in order to get into those accounts. So it really strengthens that security and it can keep other people from getting access. I always tell people, find the thing that works for you. So maybe it's an additional PIN. You'll see that on that knowledge factor side there. Possession factor is the one that we use a lot of times. Maybe it's your smartphone that gives you that option where, we've got devices that we use at work. So once we try to sign into our accounts, we have an app that pops up, with the additional information you might have to put in, or sometimes it's just clicking, yes, that's me. But that's that kind of possession factor. You have to have your device that's tied to that to be able to get into those accounts. And a lot of times I know face scans, but a lot of us use that face recognition, hold it up as you're trying to sign into your bank account or whatever, and then it gets you in after you've put in your password. So that's kind of the way that works. So just really kind of find the thing that works for you and take advantage of that multi-factor authentication method. And always encourage people to make sure you're monitoring your financial accounts particularly, and you can go through your settings with those bank accounts, so those credit cards, and set up those account alerts. Those can be great tools. So you can set them up to let you know maybe if your account falls below a certain dollar value, or maybe you've got a credit card purchase that's being made. All of those different alerts can kind of help you monitor what's going on. It's something that you can do that's free and it's easy. You just set up those alerts and you don't really have to think about it. So those are all good things to take advantage of. And of course, if you're seeing, those charges and those things that are popping up and they're not things that you've authorized, you want to take action as soon as you can with that. So if you're getting alerts about a credit card purchase that you're not currently trying to make, you want to notify that credit card company as soon as you can, because there are rules about, how fast you have to challenge all that stuff. So anything you can do to challenge that stuff as quickly as possible, you're protecting against that purchase, and you're also hopefully stopping additional purchases, that you didn't authorize from going through. So those are great tools you can do. And again, just kind of go through those financial accounts, see what your bank or your credit card provider offers, and finding the ones that work for you. And I always encourage people to kind of consider what you're using when you're shopping online. You don't want to use your debit cards when you're making those purchases online. Those credit cards are going to give you a lot more consumer protections if something goes wrong. So as you're challenging that, that money's kind of put back onto that credit card account a lot faster, and they've got a little bit more rules about all those unauthorized purchases and things like that. And if you think about it too, your debit card is that direct access to your accounts and all the money that you have. So, if somebody's got access to that and they're able to start withdrawing funds, that can create all kinds of problems. I always tell people, especially if you got a big bill that's about to come out, like your car payment, your house payment, something like that. If somebody's able to get access to that debit card, they can kind of create those problems even while you're challenging it, right? Even if it's a purchase you didn't make or didn't authorize or whatever, while that challenge is going through, it's not necessarily put back onto your debit card as quickly. So with the credit card, that's going to be put there, right away. And it's not that direct access to your credit account or your checking account rather. So, always encourage you, use a credit card for those online purchases if you can. And you might even want to talk to your bank or your credit card company about those virtual card options, Apple Pay, Google Pay, those type of things. They will give you a little bit more protections as well because they're doing a lot of encryption with that's going on. So if you're using those type of things to pay, that might be a little bit more secure, but always want to tie those into those credit cards if you can instead of that debit card. You always want to go through your credit reports at least once a year. You can go in a little bit more than that if you want. And you can look at those at annualcreditreport.com. That's the site that we recommend using because there are federal rules about how they can use your information, what they're supposed to be able to do with it or not do with your information. So annualcreditreport.com is kind of that site that's authorized by federal law. So that's why we recommend using it. And they'll give you a free credit report from each of the 3 major credit bureaus every week. You probably don't need to go in every week. That would be a little bit time consuming and probably overwhelm you. And hopefully things are going to be different every week, right? So, go in there quite frequently though, take a look at it. It doesn't really take that long. You can go to Experian, TransUnion, Equifax through this site and look at, each one of those. You can look at them all at once, or you can spread it out, maybe look at one month, one the next, something like that. But you want to go through those at least once a year, make sure everything's accurate, make sure everything belongs to you, should list phone numbers that are associated with you, addresses, and also kind of outline any of those things you have, like your credit cards, right? And it'll show how much money you owe on those credit cards. And if you have like car loans or home loans, it'll show what that loan was for, how much it was for, and then, how much you pay each month and how much is left on that loan. So all that information, you want to look over it, make sure it's accurate, make sure it actually belongs to you. And if you're finding problems, you can kind of report those to those credit bureaus and also get a hold of those companies that involve those accounts. And, you want to challenge that stuff as quickly as you can to make sure everything is your information, not somebody else's that they're trying to, leave you on the hook for. If you're finding signs of identity theft, you can put a fraud alert on your credit reports. And this will last 1 year. And it's basically going to alert businesses that may be viewing your credit reports that something's happened. So if you're applying for loans or something like that, they need to take additional steps to verify your identity before kind of approving those accounts. We say one call, that's all. So you contact Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, ask for the fraud alert. Once you do that with one, they're going to notify the other 2 major credit bureaus and put that fraud alert on those accounts as well. So that's why we say one call, that's all. You just notify Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax, and they'll notify the other 2. It's a little bit different with the security freeze, but I highly encourage people to do this. It is, again, a free tool to place. You'll place it with those credit bureaus. You do have to go through all 3 of those. Sorry about that. I advanced a little bit too fast. So you go through Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. You put that freeze on all 3 of those. And that's, again, free to do. It's going to be free to lift as well. So basically, that's going to stop people from using your name to open up credit accounts. So if somebody tries to open up a credit card and you have the freeze in place, it's not going to allow them to do that. They're not going to be able to use your information. And on the same token, you're not going to be able to use it as well while it's frozen. So if you need to open up, get a new car loan, get a new credit card, anything like that, you'll need to lift or thaw that freeze during that time. It's pretty easy to do. The websites now for Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, they generally will let you set the time frame for when you want it, thawed and when you want it be put back in place. So they'll do that for you. It generally takes about an hour, I think they say, for those thaws to go in place. So if you're like me, I had to go buy a new car. I lifted that freeze. By the time I got to the dealership, they were able to run my credit, get that car loan, uh, got that in place. And as soon as all that was over, I had it set to automatically go back in place. So that freeze is there. And again, it's protecting you. So if somebody has information about you and they're trying to open up accounts in your name, it's going to stop them. They're not going to be able to do that. So it's a great tool, and I highly recommend doing that to be able to help stop identity theft. And of course, if you think you're a victim of a scam or identity theft, you can come to South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. You can give us a call, 803-734-4200, or you can go to our website, consumer.sc.gov. And again, look for that little how do I button and report a scam or report identity theft, or one of those little drop downs that we showed you just a few minutes ago on that. And again, we have an identity theft unit. They'll kind of walk you through that process. So they might show you a little bit about what's happened, steps that you might need to take to be able to prevent further damage from happening. We encourage you to follow us on social media if you don't. Our YouTube channel is a great place to start too. SCDCA TV is our channel on YouTube. You can go there and look at any of our previous webinars. We have a lot of other information there too. So if there's something that came up in a presentation, or maybe you missed one, we have a long list of topics there on our YouTube channel. And of course, we put updates on the latest things that are happening across our state on our Facebook, X, and Instagram as well. And we have a whole variety of publications on our website. So if there's a topic you're interested in, we probably have a publication for it, and we will ship those across the state for free. So if you have a community group, church group, library that you're part of, any of those different types of things, you can get our guides, and we will send up to 50 of them to you for free across the state. Again, Ditch Pitch is our scam prevention guide. It's got a lot of great tools for identity theft, scam prevention that will help you out. We also have an ID theft prevention guide that will kind of give you a lot of good resources to help protect your information as well. And our credit report guide is a great tool to take advantage of. It really gets into what to look for, how those reports are used, and those types of things. And of course, we do our Wednesday webinars every week. The next two that we've got are 10 tips to become a savvy consumer. So we'll be doing a lot of different little bits of information here and there about a variety of topics, but we're trying to come up with 10 good tips that everybody should know. So hopefully you'll join us next week for that. And that's our 10 tips to become a savvy consumer. Then the next week, we'll be talking about timeshare, resale, and exit scams, just different things to keep in mind, especially for folks who may be having an issue trying to resell or get rid of their timeshare, get out of their contract. We'll be talking a little bit about that on September 3rd. And it is that time of year where we're getting ready for our next rounds of shred events. The next ones will be in October. So if you're in North Charleston, Columbia, Hilton Head, or Anderson area, we will be doing events in those towns. Again, that's in October. You can go to consumer.sc.gov/shred-events. So if you downloaded the presentation slides, you'll be able to click that link and it will take you right to that page and give you a little bit more information. But all of those events are 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, North Charleston Coliseum and Parking Lot A, Shanda Baptist Church in Columbia, the Coastal Discovery Museum in Hilton Head, and the Joe Brown Senior Center in Anderson. And that's there at 101 South Fant Street. And it's kind of back behind the building, kind of where we set up last year for that. But again, we'll be at all those locations in October from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Somebody did ask, and I hope I kind of gave you a good example of, they said, can you share an example of using a passkey? Yeah, the easy one that I have, my bank is one, they use passkeys for that. So before, I'd have to go in, I would enter in my username, I would enter in my password, and then I would sign in. And then they would also ask me to, confirm a PIN number that they would send me through that kind of multi-factor authentication method. So with the passkey, now whenever I'm trying to use my bank's app, I just simply hold the phone up to my face. It does the scan. And then again, it's using all of those codes that it has in there to be able to confirm that it is actually me. So they have that information stored on their site about, my information as far as my device. And then my device kind of confirms that it's me trying to sign in by using those biometrics to unlock their stuff. And then my device confirms with the bank website or their app that it is actually me trying to get in. So that's kind of that easy example for me because it's just one that I use. And I believe my phone company uses that as well in their app. So anytime I'm trying to sign in, pay my bill each month, I go in, just hold the phone up to my face and it scans my face and then gets me into their site and into their app. So that would be kind of one example of that. Somebody asked, can you only thaw your credit Monday through Friday? You can thaw it anytime. At the times I've had to do it, just happen to be Monday through Friday times, I know, because, I was going to get a car or whatever, but they do run those credit reports on Saturday, especially for those type of loans. So they do those on the weekends. So yeah, you can freeze those and unfreeze it anytime. So you can go to that website or the individual websites. That's kind of important to note. It is a little bit different than annualcreditreport.com. So you would have to go to the websites or call the phone numbers for Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. You do have to do that through those individual credit bureaus. And if you've never used their websites before, they will ask you for like your social security number and things like that on there. So I know a lot of times, first time people who kind of use those sites, they kind of worry a little bit, is it safe to kind of put that information in there? And I'd say, it's as safe as your device is. So as long as you're protecting your device and you don't have any of that malware and things like that on your device, you should be fine. But phone numbers, an option you can use for that. We have those on that credit report book. I know we have the phone numbers for there, and I believe they're in our Ditch the Pitch guide as well. So you can find those phone numbers on that through our website, consumer.sc.gov, but you can freeze those, unfreeze them any time of day, and they should be able to do that. And I would say, I had to unfreeze mine not too long ago when I changed internet providers. So they wanted to run my credit report before they, sent me that big box to be able to, sign into my Wi-Fi or create that Wi-Fi at my house. So I did have to, thaw that in order to do that. But again, just did that real quick. Had to wait the hour for the thaw to be in place. Once I was able to run that credit through that internet provider, was able to put the freeze back in place. And I think I did that at night too. So it definitely was not a Monday or, 9 to 5 type thing with that. So, you should be able to do that through those websites 24 hours. And then it looks like that may have been the last thing that I am seeing. So I want to make sure that I give you my email address and my phone number. So if you need anything, feel free to shoot me an email. You should see it right there. And that is my direct number as well. I know a lot of times think about these questions shortly after the presentation. It never fails, right? I have questions 5 minutes after a presentation and didn't think about it during the actual presentation, but now that it's over, I'm thinking about it, right? So, if you have anything that comes up, feel free to shoot me an email. You can also send them to those public info at scconsumer.gov email address as well. Those come to me. And, if you get our webinar announcements, those types of things, you can just reply to that and I will have access to those. Those go straight to my email box as well. So either one of those will work and I'll take a look at those and see what we can do to help you out. But again, a lot of those direct links in the presentation will hopefully be helpful because it does have those direct links to Microsoft, Google, and those types of things, and Apple. We have that in there. So it'll give you a little bit more information specific to the company that you probably use with your device, right? So hopefully that will help you out, and hopefully we've answered a few of the questions that you might have about passkeys and help you strengthen up some of those passwords that you might still be using. But if you don't have any more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up, and we hope you'll join us again next week. Thank you.